Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. And today we have a lovely guest with us. We've got Candace Dudley. She is a podcast guesting coach and host of the Podcasting Mentor podcast. With over 200 episodes produced and more than 50 guest appearances in 2025 alone, she helps busy solopreneurs grow their visibility and authority by landing aligned podcast stages. And get this, so they can stop relying on the algorithm and start being known as the go-to in their industry. Candace, welcome to the podcast. I have been looking forward to this.
Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled that we're going to do this today. I can't wait to see what comes out.
Absolutely. So when we were messaging back and forth, you mentioned you'd been on your own journey, as every entrepreneur has. I call it the hero's two journeys. There's the thing that you produce and achieve and build and create, but there's also who you had to become along the way. So I happen to know that you have come from a 13-year career in teaching. Please tell us how you ended up as a podcast coach.
That's a great question. I've been out of the classroom now for 4 years, but towards the end of that career, I had my own children, three sort of back to back to back. They're almost 11, 10, and 8 now, so it was one after the other, and that's when I realized that teaching, while I enjoyed it, I just couldn't not pour everything out that I had all day long to my students. They just felt like my own children. I loved my colleagues, but coming home and being sort of the mom version that I didn't like, that was like my leftover version that my kids were getting, that started to weigh on me heavily. I started my spiritual journey because I started thinking, what's wrong with me? My husband is also a teacher and he wouldn't be exhausted when we would be home after school, but I would. And I just thought, well, why am I different? And so I started reading books about maybe I'm an empath. And then I found out my human design, I was a projector, and all these different things. One thing led to the next. And I got really into a lot of different tools. I've done therapy, but I've also done Reiki and had readings. So just like went really down the rabbit hole of things that really helped me feel seen, validated, like there wasn't something wrong with me. It's just how I am designed. I'm not like everybody else, and that's okay. But how I got into podcasting was after having babies. I had gained 50 pounds. I was home on postpartum, just sort of not feeling like myself. And my first taste of entrepreneurship was in a network marketing. So health and wellness. I'm not associated anymore, but it was almost like a gateway into it. It was like a crash course into different pieces of entrepreneurship. And I ended up getting really good at that. But the best parts of it was that my community, my coach had us read personal development and start thinking about our thinking. And that wasn't what all network marketing spaces are, but it was for me, luckily. So that made me start thinking differently. And I turned to podcasts as part of that. I liked listening to podcasts. I felt seen as a mother. I felt like, oh, I can see myself in her and I feel validated. And so I eventually started my own podcast sort of on a whim one day. My third child was a baby. It was nap time. I'd been Googling it for over a year. I had had a mic in a box for 3 months that I wasn't opening. It was a nap time. I can still remember it. I was like, I need to put her down. I just know that I was still teaching too. I just know if I don't do this today and take messy action, I'm going to be in the same spot next year. And that fact was not okay with me. And so I started. Now I've been producing my own episodes. They've transformed over time to very
Of course.
Yes, to very entrepreneurial things, because that's where my heart and soul lies, especially heart-led female entrepreneurs, helping them and find their voice, because it created such a ripple effect in my life, having listened to podcasts, that I really hope that I can be a part of that when I teach others to use their voice and
Yeah.
go on podcast tours and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I resonate so much with that story. Um, when you said, you weren't showing up how you wanted to at home, that was also a huge moment for me. Yes, I had got to the burnout and my hair was falling out and my health was falling apart and I was a crying mess all the time. But when I got home, I was snapping, at my dogs and my other half, and I'm not like that. So that was also one of the first clues for me. And tell me about the entrepreneurship part, because when you go from, being in a career, a solid career, to going on your own, what was that leap like?
There was, I call it an identity crisis. There was the whole bit because it's so well respected. I live in the United States. I know we're in different countries, but it might be similar where you are, where we went to college or university. And that's what, my generation grew up thinking that's the path you take. You do this, you do that, you get a job, you stay in it, you retire. And I honestly thought I would do that. When I got married to my husband, we thought we'd both be teachers forever and we'd retire, and that was life. And that's how it was going to be, and that would have been okay. But when you start to do personal development and you start to learn yourself again after being a mother, you start to realize that maybe your priorities have shifted and things like that. So I was lucky enough that I could take a leave of absence from school. So it just meant that if I wanted to go back after a year, I could have a spot back. Pick up right where I left off, basically,
Yeah.
instead of having to like reapply or look for a job. So I was lucky that I had that safety net. But I also feel now that it kind of kept me in a limbo type feeling, because it was like I decided to leave, but then I had to redecide over and over because I took 3 years of leaves of absence, so 3 times I decided, and so this year I finally resigned officially and was like, I can't keep doing this. I've already
Yeah.
decided, my whole body knows that we're not going back. So yes, but there was a huge shift because it's so respected to say I'm a teacher, and that's a really easy answer when someone says, "What do you do?" And even when I left, I found myself in the first year and a half saying, "Oh, I used to be a teacher." It was just so much easier to explain to certain people, that you didn't want to get into. Well, it's a longer explanation, but I'm in the podcasting space. I'm really trying to figure things out. I'm trying to niche down. I'm trying to figure out where my space is. That's not like an answer that people passing by that are casually asking you that want to have. But I fully believe that we have to really step into that new identity, get uncomfortable. It can be uncomfortable to say what you are. For me, I felt like, well, I didn't have enough success yet, or I didn't enough of clients yet to be able to say, I'm this. I'm a podcast guesting coach, strategist. I help people with this. I have an expertise in this because of the last 4 years that I've been in this space, building a network, honing my skills, learning all the things. So I still teach in that capacity, but not in a classroom, and I don't think I ever will again. But that identity change shift was just huge when I started finally saying what I am now.
Yeah.
You could just feel the difference in that, because honestly, what was happening then when I would say I used to teach, the school would call me up to see if I would come substitute teach. So I was like calling that into my life over and over. So yeah, limbo wasn't a great place to
Like the
be, but you,
universe keeps testing you. Will you come back? Will you
are
come
you
back?
sure? Are you sure? And it's
And
so
you're like,
easy.
no, I'm not.
And I have subbed, I have gone and done that, and I will say it's easy to slide back into that old version of yourself because it's what you know. So even though I left and I was like peak anxiety in my body, just buzzing every day, just not feeling good, like I knew that my body was giving me signs long before I listened that this was not for me anymore. But it is easy because your brain knows it. It's known, so it feels safe and comfortable, even when your body still is saying, no, no, this is
Do
not
you
where we need to
know,
be.
this is so healthy, I think, for people who are in that transition to here, because that transition is not easy and it can be messy and there are no road signs, and sometimes all you're going on is a gut feeling. I mean, I wonder if you were the same, saying to your husband, I have no idea why. I just know that I have to do this thing. That's all I can tell you. And particularly when you've had a more acceptable career or a more understood career for so
Hmm.
long, and your identity has been tied up in that for so long, there is so much that you have to unpick about who am I now? Who am I now when I'm not a teacher, when I'm not a chiropractor, when I'm in this space of I actually don't know who I am yet because I'm in the process of discovering that. I'm in the process of taking off all the layers of who I thought I had to be, who it was acceptable to be, who everyone needed me to be. And I'm on this journey to find out who I really am on the inside. I've got something that's pulling me saying, hey, your skills are needed in the world, your medicine is needed in the world, but I don't actually know what that is yet. It's like you have all these balls in the air. You know they fit somewhere, but you just haven't quite pieced them together yet. And I think for people who are in that space, to hear that this is normal and it is messy, and there will be days where you're crying, going, I don't know where to go next. But there will be other days where you're just flying high, going, oh my God, this is the best decision I ever made.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's okay to not know when you bring that up of like trying to tell my husband or my family and people around me that are closest to me. It's like you might not have the words. I didn't have the words that they could understand. I come from a long line of teachers. I have family, aunts, uncles, parents, siblings who are teachers. My husband's a teacher. So this was really felt out of left field for them. And you get to a point where you realize that you just can't try to keep explaining. You just have to trust yourself. You just have to go with it because they can't give you permission. They love you as much as they would if they could give you permission, they'd want to, but they don't even know where you're trying to go. That's not even in their realm of thinking. So they can't give that permission to you because
Yeah,
they don't know. And that was a light bulb moment too of like, only I can do that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
we've got a good track record. We've gotten ourselves this far in life. So let's trust that. We've always figured it out and that we will figure this out too.
Yeah, and that is such a huge superpower, is being able to back yourself and trust yourself when you can't see what's ahead. That gets you through so many challenges. So share with me then, you go, right, now I feel like it's some kind of podcasting thing. And in the beginning, I don't know about for you, it's a bit of a scattergun approach because you don't really know what your niche is. You don't really know what you're super, super good at. You're good at lots of things, but what is the one thing that you're super good at? How did you go through that little arc?
Oh, you're right. And you hear all the advice to niche down, get specific so you're known for that thing. And I kept thinking, oh, I don't, could someone just tell me what it should be? I don't know if I like one thing more than the other. I'd rather just somebody tell me and I'll just do it. But that's not how it works. So, but podcasting is such, you think it's a specific thing. It's not. When you're in it, there's a lot. You could be someone that markets podcasts. You could handle the production. You could handle show notes. You could do editing. You could also land where I did in the guesting space, helping people guest. Because for me, how I got there was I had been doing my own show, and I was really good at sticking to the schedule of getting that weekly episode out. And I started to have some guests, and it turned very entrepreneurial, female entrepreneurial pieces that we would discuss. I would discuss, and I started getting questions from people about guesting. Also, as a host, you probably get this too, where we get bad pitches. So we're getting bad pitches, emails from a lot of times they're PR companies that are just kind of in it for quantity, get as many out as possible, and not really in it for what I preach is quality alignment, finding those right audiences and those right shows and the hosts, because one of those appearances will trump any amount of other unaligned but guessings that you do. And so it kind of was natural for me to just continue to shift into that. I mean, I did some editing of podcasts for a while. I do like behind the scenes work. I'm an introvert. I do love that, but I like that about podcasts that were one-to-one, having deep conversations. So because of the questions I was being asked, because of the pitches I was getting, that I was like, these are so bad. I started speaking on it, talking about it. And that's kind of how in the last 2 years, I've just really fell in love with that space of podcasting, because I also like that you don't have to have your own podcast. A podcast is a huge time consuming thing. I love it, but it's not for everyone. But you could guest on a podcast still, and you could use your voice. And it's just, there's so many ripple effects from having then deciding, hey, I'm going to go be my own best client. What if I just took myself on a podcast tour and just did it like I do for my clients? And so I did last year, and I got to meet the best people, the biggest network of amazing humans. Now, when I go to social media or threads, I'm tagged every time about anything about podcast guesting.
Yeah.
Someone that I was on their show is tagging me.
Yeah.
And I've basically been able to just repeat my message over and over. Obviously, it's different for every podcast. And that's one question clients ask me is like, do I have to have a different topic? Can I keep doing that many podcasts? You absolutely can keep doing it because not one podcast is the same. We're having a much different, the overarching picture is to use your voice through podcast guesting, but we're having a much different conversation than I would have on a different podcast because of the
Yeah.
stories and parts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's absolutely, you can repeat that, and that's how you become known for what you do, because it's part of the strategy of sticking to that topic that aligns with what you do, who you serve, and it just
Yeah.
all fits together in alignment. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was mostly just a natural thing where it was like, I like podcasting. I've now have all this experience with it. I know all the technical pieces, the ins and outs, and now how an episode runs. A lot of people don't understand how that might flow. So all those pieces, and then being asked certain questions and seeing this need, because I don't know very many people. I've recently met one other person that does something similar that I do, but again, we both have a different a
Yeah.
niche part. So it's pretty cool when you stumble across that. But yeah, it was just a
And
need, and
that's the thing that I stress to people. Even if two people do exactly the same thing, it's through a completely different filter. You don't have the same background, you don't have the same childhood, you don't have the same lessons or experiences. So when that energy comes through your voice and your business, it's going to be very different from the other person, even though the algorithm might say you're talking about the same thing. The essence and the energy behind it is completely different. So when people say, oh, but other people talk about this, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We need you to talk about it in the way that only you can talk about it. Um,
absolutely.
so speaking of voices, because energetically, voices, speaking your truth, selling your gifts, selling your medicine, articulating what you can do is such a huge skill. It's one of the keys that I talk about that unlock prosperity. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, and I'll do the same, about the first time you put that microphone on, and whether it's a live or podcasting or whatever, you're making it come out through your mouth. I know for me, I had notes everywhere. So this is my screen, but I've got like post-it notes, and I've got a script, and I've got, a flip chart behind me, and I'm really prepared. And then you go to make it come out your mouth, and you're like, whose voice is that? That's not even mine.
Yes.
You just turn into a completely different person. It's, for me, one of the hardest things was to be me when I speak.
Yes.
Share
Uh,
your.
yes, that's funny. People have said that before, and I can see how that happens, especially if, so it's funny because you had notes and things like that. My experience was I always, at the time when I was first getting into entrepreneurship, I just made a deal with myself that I would constantly push my comfort zone. So even if it was a pinky toe outside of the comfort zone, I'm like, I gotta do it. And so if I got those butterflies in my stomach, the little excited nerves, I knew I have to do this. And so I was just big on taking inspired action. So I would just wing it. I would no notes or anything. I'd hit record, and I just promised myself that I would hit post like on my stories or something when I first started using my voice and not just having a static picture, which is completely different than just posting a picture. It's a different beast. And I remember feeling like I was going to throw up, but I mean, so nervous, so nervous. But yeah, it was just sort of a deal I made with myself early on that was like, when you're inspired, when you feel it and you have something to say, don't think about why would I say that? Doesn't make sense. Trust that someone needs to hear it. So that's what I tell my guests when I record with them too, or when I get on my own solo episodes. I always say, trust that whatever comes out today, someone needed to hear it, and that
Yeah,
is good enough.
yeah, absolutely. There have been so many times, even when you're creating reels, and I've put the camera to my face, I've hit record, and it's like your brain falls out the back of your head. All that
Yes.
inspiration that you had leading up to that moment, the moment you pressed record, it just drops out the back of your head.
Absolutely. That's exactly why I had to learn how to edit my own podcast. My first episode is not edited. It's 6 minutes of just like a riff inspired. It was about starting before you're ready, because that's what I was doing. And yeah, that's why I had to learn to edit, because you're exactly right. You get inspired, you get that minute done, and then you're like, well, that's not a whole podcast episode. So what else are we going to do here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's when you're in it, you feel like you've been talking for ages, and then you look at the timestamp and you think, oh. But it is a muscle and it is just practice. I personally started my podcast hoping almost that nobody was going to be listening in the beginning so that I could start to articulate what it was that I did, because I had gone from being a chiropractor, biomechanical background. We were, evidence-based, scientific. And then I moved into the field of energetics, and it was a whole new language that was trying to come through. So in the first instance, that's why I did it, so that I could sit down and I could learn to speak about what it was that I was doing. And it is, I think, a vital skill to be able to get your message out there, to be able to sell what you're doing, to be able to grow into the person that you need to become to share the message that you're here to share. So in your experience, what are some of the things that prevent people? What are some of the stumbling blocks that you hear where people go, oh, podcasting's not for me?
There's a lot, but one first and foremost is that, I have to have my own podcast to do it, where they think that they discount themselves immediately right off the bat if they don't have a podcast, and that's not true. Most hosts don't require people to do a swap, and it's not always an aligned fit for your topic on their show and their show, vice versa. It's not always a
Yeah.
fit. But then just mindset too of, well, who am I? There's other people that know more than me. There, and I always say, yes, actually, that's probably factual. That's probably a fact. There's people that know more than me. There's people beyond us. But the point is that there's someone listening to the show that is waiting for you. They're waiting for
Yeah.
your take. And you mentioned that earlier, how you do it, your experience. They haven't connected with anyone else yet for a reason. And so I firmly believe there's a space for all of us in this podcasting space, or just sharing our message in the world in general, because there's plenty of people that just haven't felt that connection. So you know exactly enough as you are today to help that person. You don't need to know everything about your field. You don't need to know that. You're helping the people that want to get to where you are. So that makes you an expert because you're here, right?
You've already done it.
Yeah, so you have to have a little trust in yourself that you do have value to bring. Sometimes we think when we get on a podcast that value equals, giving away as many tips and advice, and if it's just tons and tons of tips and tips, but you have to think about when someone gets done listening to that episode, how will they feel? Will they feel overwhelmed, or will they feel empowered to be able to go do the one or two things that you said, you could do this today, and now they
Mm.
feel like I could do that. That's value versus feeling like, well, those 20 things, that was great information, but I would never be able to get all that done, so now I can't take
Yeah.
action.
Yeah.
So we don't have to be prepared to give that much on a podcast. We have value, and podcast episodes are short and sweet. We have to stay
Yeah.
in that one specific niche topic, because we just don't have the attention spans to bounce all over the place in one episode.
No. And I think people are starting to crave that depth as well. Um, Whereas, I'm finding things that aren't authentic on social media now really jarring, much more so than I ever used to before. And so I think people are migrating. Even, Substack is not a thing for me, but it's that whole idea that people are craving more depth, and the connections that you can feel, and the stories that you can hear, and the resonance in someone's journey where you can go, oh, that's where I am. Although it feels uncomfortable, this is kind of normal, because they both said that they went through it as well. So that for me was really encouraging when I was going through my own stuff as well.
Absolutely. This world of AI that we're in, it is such a, like you said, we're craving it. The pendulum is swinging back. People want connection. People want community. They want your authenticity. And podcasting to me is a perfect spot because you can fake it for a minute reel, a quick live video on Instagram. You can't fake a podcast episode. And if you are and
No.
you're reading completely from a script, then we can tell that. But if
Yeah.
if you're showing up genuine and trusting in your voice, and you get better as you go. You don't walk into the arena like being able to speak very well immediately.
No.
So you do get better, but it's okay to start where you're at. I just want people to know that. But people are craving it, and this is going to speed up that know, like, and trust, and building that connections with people. It speeds it up so much faster, and so I always feel like it's well worth my time to guest and have these conversations versus the time and energy I might put into creating 10 reels for the next 2 weeks or something like that. That's more
Yeah.
draining to me. But
Yeah.
if you love that, then lean into that. There's
Exactly.
strategies work for everyone, but not every strategy works for you.
Yeah.
And it's finding the one that works. So if you're
I
like me and
just
feel drained from social media and things, you might lean into this.
I just wanted to ask you because you mentioned earlier that you're quite an introvert, so you like the editing behind the scenes and stuff. What are your profile lines in human design? Do you know?
Or 1 and a 3.
Okay. I'm a I'm a 2/4, so my 2 is a hermit. So I also
Ah,
half of what I like to do is also behind the scenes, going deep, doing my own thing, and then I like to come out and share it with my community. Um, but a 1/3, oh, very investigative.
yes, I can get down a rabbit hole real
Yes.
quick. So, which is
Yeah.
probably why I'm good at finding the right shows for people, because if I need to deep dive something, it's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's perfect. And then just something that it keeps coming into my mind, so I'm going to share it. When it comes to sharing your message, sharing your voice, getting on podcasts, getting on shows, also know that you cannot mess this up. This is something that I want people to know. You cannot mess it up because there are all sorts of divinely guided things that we are not aware of. If you're not meant to be on a podcast, you will not get on that podcast. If you are meant to be on that podcast, heaven and earth will be moved so that you are. Um, I was given an opportunity for an interview on a radio show once. So, not a podcast, but still a speaking gig. And after I accepted the gig, I went in the Akashic Records and I was like, does this serve my highest good and healing for the business to go on this podcast, to go on this interview? And I got a no. And I thought, oh no, I've already agreed to do it. So I asked further and I said, okay, is the show a no? Is the time a no? And it happened to be the time. So the show was good, but the time was a no. But it was early on in my journey. So I just thought, well, I've said yes now. So I have to show up. And I was kind of in the background thinking, oh, they're going to cancel or something if I'm not meant to be on it. And the day came and I got ready. And just like this, I heard her introduce me and I had to click this button so that I would go live, and the button would not click. No matter what I did, this button would not let me in the room because I wasn't meant to be in the room on that day. So I made my apologies, tech issue, couldn't get on, and can we reschedule? And got on, had the conversation, and I got a client off the back of it. Because if it had gone ahead when we were supposed to, she probably wasn't listening. But because we waited, the person that needed to hear it and needed to get to me could hear it. So please don't take any of your knockbacks as no's, just see them as redirections. You can't mess it up. Like, yeah, you want your bio to be nice and you want your pitch to be good, but largely, if you are meant to be on that podcast, you will be on that podcast.
I love that message, and you're right. Like, yes, there's strategy and things we can implement, but in the grand scheme of it, the bigger picture, those no's that you inevitably will get if you do try to start
Mm,
pitching shows, I too say that's a good thing. Your speaking topics, your niche topics must be really clear. And then that allows that host to know that it's not, their audience isn't looking for that. And so it's not fit for either of you. So I always try to, that's a good thing. That's showing that alignment that you are in your zone. So then the yeses are going to be even more powerful. They're going to be
Yeah.
even more aligned.
Yeah.
It's going to be good.
Okay, so one last question that I want to ask you before we wrap up, and I'm not going to lie, this is for my own benefit as well as my audience. You mentioned bad pitches. Please, can you share with us some little tips on how to pitch a podcast?
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of things that make them bad. One is you can usually see the copy paste, like they copy and pasted one exact title of one of your episodes, or they spell your name wrong, or something like that. But the biggest thing that's glaring is, someone will pitch someone that is not aligned with your show. So, for example, female entrepreneurship and podcasting is my space, right? And so if I'm getting pitched by a male realtor, you didn't check for a line. That's not a guess that I'm going to have. So what I preach are two things in your pitch. One, show that you've done your homework. That just means that you've listened to the show. We're so close to our podcasts, and they're just such a passion project for most of us, something we love. And so you can tell really quickly if someone hasn't listened, and then that's an automatic. Usually you feel like, no, if you haven't at least, I don't mean listen to all 100 episodes, but hop around, get a good vibe check the energy, make sure that it does feel good to you and that there's something that matches with your mission, their mission, and that alignment is there. So sharing that briefly is one thing, part of the pitch, to let them know I have listened and I do think we'd be a good pair. And then the value that you're going to bring to the show, because that's all we really care about in our podcast. We want to protect our audiences and we want to serve them. And to do that, we need to make sure that our guests are bringing value. And so that's where I have my clients list out there, 2 to 3 speaking topics that are really specific to their niche and what they do. And you just say, I can bring a lot of value to your show. And one of these topics is any of them feel like a fit. And overall, you just be a human and think about like,
Yeah.
how would you want to be approached, and, give them an out, let them say no, and that's okay. And follow it up with like, you're glad to be connected now, even if that didn't fit at this time, maybe something will down the road. But, so those two things, show you did your homework, and, the value that you're going to bring, because it just tells me as a host that you're going to come in and serve my audience. And that's what I intend to do with every episode. And so, it makes it a lot easier to say yes or no, especially if
Yeah.
you have something really specific, because a really unique take or something that makes you different than someone
Yeah.
else, because
Yeah.
we all are different. So figure that
Yeah.
out and present it in a speaking topic. I write mine and my clients as podcast episode titles, because
Yeah.
then again, that's just how a host is thinking. And it's just an easy, oh, I can see where that conversation would be.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you. Those are so, so useful. And whether your thing is writing or speaking, I think it's really valuable to have some kind of longer format
Mm-hmm.
in your marketing. Because, like you say, how many times have you sat trying to put your entire life's work in a 7-second reel? It's really difficult, but it gives you so much leeway when you can just have a conversation. And I know when I started, it felt a little bit intimidating, a little bit daunting, as you're coming up to the podcast. But as soon as you get the other person on the screen and you see that they're just a person and you're just having a conversation, it really does put you at ease, and then it starts to get easier and easier. So yeah,
Yep.
I would certainly encourage, like you say, not necessarily to have your own. My first mentor, she used to guest on podcasts all the time. She never ever had her own,
Mm-hmm.
and she was successful. It was brilliant. So
Yeah.
the only reason I started my own was so that I could practice speaking about what I was doing. But yeah, just to get yourself out there and just start. I know
Yep.
it's the most cliched bit of advice,
It
but
is.
just start.
And if you're a little nervous about it, just trust that as podcast hosts, we want our guests to do well. So even if you stumble, even if you're, mom brain and you pause and you forget what you're going to say, it happens. We will jump in and pick it up for you. I've never
Yeah.
been on a show where they just like let you, drown. And also a lot of us edit. So you just trust that the host wants the episode to go well and they're going to make sure it does. And so even if you're nervous in the beginning, that they're going to be there to support you. But another thing is to consider having speaking topics. Look at your work and what you're most passionate about and lead with that when you're booking those shows. So many of my clients say that they just never considered that first. They just were excited, which as we all are, like this is fun and exciting when you get going. But if you have some speaking topics and you present those to the host, that allows the questions that you get asked on the show to be really in your zone of genius and in your niche. And you'll feel so comfortable answering them because it's stuff you do every day. You won't have to think. You won't need the Post-it note eventually because it's just what you love to do. And so it'll be so great to just get asked that. When do you get a chance to get asked that?
Yeah. And I think that really helps because it narrows down the chance of, because I was historically an overthinker. So what if they ask me something that I don't know the answer to? Number one, we are not trying to trip you up. We are trying to sell you in your best light.
Yes.
And number two, if you give us a steer, then we're less likely to get into territory that you're less comfortable speaking about.
Yep, absolutely.
Amazing. So is there anything you would like to leave us with before we wrap up?
Sure. If you are interested in speaking on podcasts, you could hop in to my free podcast matchmaking community. It's for hosts that are looking for guests as well as guests that are looking for shows. So it's just a very easy, low-key place to make those connections. And there's people being added every day. So it might be a spot where you can make that first connection and start your guesting.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for creating that space. I mean, that's how we found each other. And I've sent everyone who's guested for me onto there as well, just to try and grow the community because it's all about collaboration and we're no longer tearing each other down. There's no more room for if you're winning, it means I'm losing. We're all trying to raise each other up. So yeah, I've been sending people there and hopefully they find as much success as I have.
Thank you.
I will leave the link for that below, obviously. And so if you're thinking about having a cheeky guest, you can go on there and find yourself some hosts who are looking for people.
Yes, thank you so much. And your listeners can find me at Candace Dudley, just my name, pretty much anywhere, Instagram, Threads. It's me behind the DM, behind the screen. So I would love to hear if they have lingering questions or anything like that. Feel free. I'm pretty much an open book, so don't be shy.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much for coming. I knew that I was going to absolutely love this conversation. I think you've left the audience with some really good things they can sink their teeth into, get their head around, get themselves out there, because the world needs what you have to offer and it needs it right now. So like you did, like I did, just take the messy action and go for it.
Oh, yes. Thanks for having me. You are doing such great. Your podcast is what the world needs right now. So this is great.
Amazing. And for everybody out there, I look forward to connecting with you on the next podcast.